spring pass. So my readout is saying I've taken 65 thousandths down, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. See if I can get a measurement. Barely. $770. So what it's saying? Oh, this little thing. It's like 769. $730,000. 769. 30. That's about 39. According to this, I'm 35, so it's taken just a hair off more. No, it hasn't taken off quite as much. So this is 65 from 100 is 35. It's actually 39. So it's cutting a little shy. But keep sneaking up on it. So let me give you an update on what's going on here. Since I've gotten down into the realm of 20 thousandths of an inch or so to get my first thickness, I came across something. So I noticed that this side of the cutter was cutting before this side of the cutter. Essentially what that means is that this head, which, let me take it over here. There's a guy over here. I had set on 0. It allows you to pivot this head to different angles to use the cutter on different angles. What happens with a big face like this, 2 inches, if that 2-inch disc, wish I had something to use. Oh, okay, this will work. Imagine this is the plane of the cutter. It's cutting a flat area, right? If this guy is tilted this way a little bit, and I'm showing exaggeration, it's not cutting a flat surface, it's actually cutting a radius in the surface. Now, if this thing is right here and it's only up by 3 thousandths of an inch, it looks flat, but it's actually a concave groove all the way to the length of that piece. And so I aligned it. It involved me moving it 3 thousandths of an inch. And if you look at it, I did just a very light cut right along this edge. See, it's very nice and polished. And then right around this edge, it's just hitting. That's because it's hitting on the corners, because this is low in the middle. And I can see it right now in this thing. It's really, really interesting. Because you can see, I just made a pass in this direction, and you can see these circles, half circles of going that way, and they ain't in the middle. In the middle, they're going the other way from the prior pass. So I thought I'd point that out. Make sure your cutter's level, unless you are trying to do what you do with it. And there are times when you leave a low spot in there. I absolutely know that. it's got a cut it off with a bandsaw. Now I'm just bringing it down. I scribed a line. It's pretty close to where the other one is. If I get it that close, I can polish and, you know, ultimately if these things are really looking good, I might try to find somebody with a surface grinder that wants to match them for me. But currently don't know anybody with a surface grinder. So, zero this guy. About 5 thousandths. Of course, I can't hold them straight. If you're looking real close, you're going to notice that this one is about between 1 and 1.5 thousandths bigger all the way around than this one. So the next part is putting these channels in here, these guys. Yahoo! So okay. See, I got the piece in here, and I've got to cut a groove in it, and I want that groove to match this one. I did a bunch of measuring and realized that it was the old ones. You know, it's old and it's worn, it's probably got some dings in it, but I used I cheated on figuring out where to put the cutter. Usually you get an indicator and you find center and you use a DRO, which I have up here, to set it, but for me it took me just a few seconds because I set that in there just like that, lined up the mill, since this piece, when I measure it, it's within 1 and 1.5 thousandths bigger than this one. So when I clamp it in, this guy, it just fits. So that's the way it works. Hey, mijo. Okay, so I've kind of been sanding this down. You can see the marks from the mill. I left it a couple thousandths fat so I could polish it, and a couple of thousandths in polishing is a long way. So, removing scratches 101. I'm using a piece of 180 as an initial. Start with coarse. 180 is going to leave scratches that are a lot smaller than the milling marks. So I'm actually doing both sides. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, the trick, at least the way I was taught, is to do a repeating pattern. And it's telling, because this was 10 strokes on 180. And I had some pictures before that thing looked absolutely perfect. But those are deviations that are in that surface. So I went from the lower right corner to upper 10 quarter 10 times. Now I'm going to turn it sideways, like 90 degrees. And I'm going across it. And you just keep repeating that pattern. So essentially, it sits like this, it sits like this, it sits like this. You get the idea. So you always go the same direction. I go this way because I get a longer stroke. But once it's on the side, you got to bear in mind that if you push on the top, it's going to do this. And if you put pressure on it while you push it, it's going to lean it over and it's going to scrape one edge more than the other. So the thing to do is hold it down by the bottom and let the weight do it. And I'm not pushing down. I'm letting the weight of the part. So then again, I'm going to reiterate. It looks like I might be pressing on it, but all I'm doing is holding it and sliding it back and forth and letting the weight hold it down. So there's, it's getting better and better. You'll be tempted to start putting pressure on it, especially when you get down where you have fewer and fewer defects or surface marks. I can only counsel against that. I've also been instructed over the years that shorter strokes are better than longer ones. I don't know if that's true or not. It's getting better. But I'm not going to let the camera run. It'll be a long time. It's talking several hours. But I'll get a look at it. There's the better side that looked perfect. And there's the one that's actually flatter, but it's got more scratches. Okay, bunch of sweat. About an hour later. So, 180, 320, 400, 600, and then 1,000 grit paper. And I got it to this spot right here. I want to show you. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. But you know when you're getting there, when one stroke across the sandpaper and it all looks identical. And when you're getting down to the 1,000 grit range, you can put a finger on there and immediately start to get surface rust. I mean, it's just crazy fast. And that's because it's so clean. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this. I'll zoom it in. You look right about there. That little scratch that's right here, it makes me want to discuss something. It's the difference between appearance and functionality. Obviously, we all want a nice finish when we're machining. My little mill, it doesn't have anywhere near the rigidity of a good big mill. So even small cuts, you can feel it vibrating, and that imparts a little bit of deviation in the tool. And end of the day, I have to do a lot of hand finishing to make it look pretty. But the bottom line is, for a thing like a parallel or a machine tool like your ways, anything that's a machine surface that's precision, a defect in the surface that is below the surface doesn't matter. It's when things stick out, and by buffing it off, you take the high spots off, and then hopefully if you scrape it or you surface grind it, you get it really, really down there. In a case like this where I have a hard time finding it, but there's a little tiny scratch left over from the mill, the end mill, and you can't feel it hardly at all. I think I've talked before when I was working for Porsche and Mercedes, the Germans all said that your little finger on the non-dominant hand was the most sensitive one. Yeah, I can kind of feel it, but it's a hole. It doesn't change how this functions. And if you chase it too far, you'll end up polishing it, grinding it, whatever, below the target thickness. And if you're trying to get it like really precise, you can throw away hours of work just by trying to make it pretty. as opposed to trying to make it functional. So this isn't really perfect yet because I got a sandpaper on top of my granite plate, but you can see how they look. I'm going to pull the camera out. Stand by for motion sickness. There's the old one on the right and a new one. Now obviously they look different, but they are functional. Focus. Thank you. Another difference, if you look at this original one, trying to get a good shot at it. Notice that that square groove, the corner is square. My little end mill has a radius at the edge, so you can see that radius from this root of this corner. I really don't care about the radius. What I care about is getting them as close to the same size as possible. That's all I care about. And I'm there. So I'm going to polish this guy a little bit up with mothers, and then I'm going to stamp Conde in the middle. I think I'll do K Conde because it'll be my name, not my grandpa's name. But that's it. I'm really happy. It's kind of comical though, because I was telling myself I want to duplicate it exactly. So it's not exact, but it's just as, it's almost the same out of spec as the original, which is a pretty good job. But I can't take the credit for it. I think my capabilities are what led it to be out of spec slightly. And we're talking about tenths of a thousandths, one way or another. So overall, there it is. I'll get some better pictures when I'm done stamping my name or something like that. See the Band-Aid? It's a reminder not to hit yourself with a hammer when you're pounding on a punch. Because I was stamping my initials in there and screwed up. So, polishing action. You get to this point, then you find out every little scratch you missed. And when you get it polished this good, you look at it, you put a scratch in it. Because they're so sensitive. But start with a good finish and oil it, and it'll wear into decent surface. I like the cheap terry cloth towels because the polishing compound gets embedded in there and it makes them work a lot better. Oh yeah, I can see some flaw action in there, but like I said a minute ago, it's not about how pretty it is, although you like it to look good. It's about being the correct size. See if I can get this guy down lower. I got a really low budget camera mount. It's actually made out of an old 16 millimeter film movie screen to kind of, we went back in the 40s and 50s when your dad would show home movies. So, a little bit of mothers. Now, it's got a corrosive action. I think it's because it's for aluminum. But it turns black, and that tells me it's peeling off metal. Quite frankly, you can polish steel with anything. Piece of wood, piece of leather, your skin. And polish it with a piece of silk. It just takes a long time, so that's why you have some sort of a compound. Small things like this, when it gets down to that spot, a lot of times I'll just directly rub it on the it's looking pretty good. Then you just get this thing out. Just sit there and work it. I mean, it ain't a mirror. It's just a parallel, right? It's about as good as you want. Gets too pretty, you ain't gonna want to use it. You want to put it on a shelf and stare at it, right? All right. Okay, Conde. Conde. My grandpa, Elton. I can never figure out how his name was Elton. Well, it was Elton Theater, I think. And they called him Ted. Everybody called him Ted. I call him Grandpa. Oh. Shiny. Very nice. So that's it. Duplicated my Grandpa Conde's parallel. Now I have a set. And they're close enough for me. For the kind of stuff I do.